The annual school survey, over 15,000 pupils fell pregnant during that academic year, with recent reports suggesting that the rate of teenage pregnancy is on the rise. This as over 1,000 learners just from Ekurhuleni alone, that's just one area, reportedly fell pregnant last year, and one of them is a grade 5 pupil. Older men preying on young girls has been partly attributed to the escalating teenage pregnancy numbers. Let's discuss this disturbing trend, and we've assembled a panel this morning, and we welcome into the studio Father Smangaliso Mkhatshwa, who's the Chairperson of the Moral Regeneration Movement. We've also got Kitty Moepang, who is from Programs and Training Coordinator at Boys and Girls Clubs of South Africa, and Thabile Ngcobo from the Department of Social Development. All of you, thank you for coming. It's good to have all of you here with us this morning.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
All right, it's difficult to even find a place to begin, because I think these stories that are coming out are more and more disturbing and very, very worrying, especially that the trend is getting worse. It's not getting any better. So, Father, let me begin with you. What is your reaction when you see reports of just in Ekurhuleni alone, 1,000 pregnancies of young school girls, and talking in grade 5? I mean, that's frightening for me.
Thank you very much. When Madiba called for the RDP of the soul as early as 1994, we are now seeing the need, the reason why he had to make that call. Because we're in a situation now where society is very permissive. And that's why, for example, we see this problem of so many pregnancies and so on, particularly of teenagers. And here we're talking probably primarily about those that are in institutions of learning and so on. But I'm sure there are 1,000 other teenagers who are probably also victims of pregnancy that are not, in fact, even covered by the statistics. So we live in an environment that is, first of all, one, very permissive, and in an environment where probably we emphasize what should not happen, instead of emphasizing the positive.
Yeah.
There's very little emphasis on discipline. We'd rather dish out condoms and things like that, but very little emphasis on personal discipline, especially for young people, which is very important also for their lives. Secondly, we also, linked to that, Leanne, we live in a culture of the bling. Mm-hmm. Young people want beautiful things, expensive cell phones, expensive hairstyles, expensive clothes, expensive cars, expensive drinks, all those things, very, very expensive. And it therefore makes them easy victims to exploiters. Yeah. And that's why the scourge of blessers, in fact, has become almost the norm. It's real fun, because they provide that which young people are attracted to. Yeah. And that has become a way of life. You are smart when you have all these things. You are very important, you are very beautiful when you have got all these things. And we actually then forget that, unfortunately, life is much more important than that. But also the fragmentation of the family structures. Yeah. Yeah. Where do these kids get the actual guidance and education about life? Not just about a few things that they enjoy and so on, about life itself, which was very different in the in olden days when there was social cohesion, and when young people were brought up in a particular way, they were guided. That also had support systems.
I think you've brought up three of the most key issues that are fundamentally the major issues that we're dealing with. But let's dig a little bit deeper. And Father, thank you for going through all of those. But Kitty, let's get to you and your organization. Yes. You're on the ground, so you see what's going on. So what Father has just put through, whether we talk about that moral regeneration that's happening, those blessers, the life of bling, the instant gratification, and family that is just not there to support their children. These are some of the major issues, but what do you see on the ground? What's the problem?
Well, I can agree with what Father is saying, because our society right now, there's so much access. Our young people are seeing examples of how to live from someone maybe miles and miles away from them in a different continent. And even though they can be a family structure and we're bringing the children up in a certain way, we cannot control what they consume from the internet and what they consume from their peers. That's where the Boys and Girls Clubs, we try and bridge that gap between parenting, between schooling, and then the after-school program. We have a program called Smart Girls, and basically we take our young girls through, starting through the anatomy of being a woman, understanding the biology, then understanding how to make those healthy choices with their lives. And we pride ourselves in creating a safe space for our young people, both physically and emotionally, because sometimes the decisions do happen where our young people make those mistakes. We want them to know that there is a place where they can come back to and know that they will not be judged, but rather they'd be supported in being resilient from that mistake or that decision that happened. We believe a lot in equipping our young people with the skills to make healthy life choices. And those can be both in terms of knowing that I can consume media and see the flashy lifestyle, but be smart enough to understand that I definitely need to empower myself. I need an education. I need to be able to stand on my own 2 feet. So we basically standing in the position where children don't know, don't have information. And once they have that education, that information, and understand their sexuality, their sexual choices, and not be ridiculed for it, that's when they begin to make conscious decisions. My mother used to always say, don't go and experiment in the streets. And we find that's what our children do, because there's no space for conversation. We look down upon relationships and dating, therefore making it a shameful act, and our children hide. And in hiding, there's no one to advise, to teach, or to guide. And that's what we're trying to do at the Boys and Girls Clubs, with both our Smart Girls program, which is for young girls, and our Passport to Manhood, which is the equivalent for our young boys.
All right. I want to, just before we take a break, because we'll continue this discussion, from the Social Development Department and from, you know, there's so many issues that are surrounding our schools and young girls, particularly young girls. It's not new. Teenage pregnancy in South Africa is not a new phenomenon, but it is on the rise and it's getting worse. What does your department do to try and better the situation? Because it becomes a burden on the state at the end of the day.
Okay, well, I'd firstly like to just say that the Department of Social Development has various interventions that they're currently working on to try and curb the problem of teenage pregnancy in the country. Firstly, I'd also like to just mention the fact that teenage pregnancy was determined as one of the major challenges in the country more than 20 years ago, and this is reflected in what we call the white paper within government. We also have what we call the framework strategy, specifically focusing on adolescent sexual reproductive health and rights. There, what we have is priority areas where we work with other departments as lead agencies. For instance, we coordinate these lead departments. We have what we call something that we call the comprehensive sexuality education as another one of our priority areas. The third one being in connection with the Department of Health. There, we try to work closely with the Department of Health to try and curb some of these issues as well, as the department being the lead agency. We also have what we call building supportive networks. This is within our priority 4 of the framework strategy. Mind you, there are 5 priority areas within this framework strategy, and it's specifically on adolescent sexual reproductive health and rights. Then lastly, we look at the legislative framework, legislative reviews within the country. And there what we do is we try to assess the situation, specifically focusing on reproductive justice for this specific priority area. So there are various interventions that we are undertaking with regard to trying to assist with the problem of teenage pregnancy in the country.
I want to take a very quick break. We'll be back. We'll continue this discussion. If you'd like to get hold of us, please do. This is such a major discussion. I'm not sure how far we're going to get here, because it needs so much discussion, and you know, perhaps even having a young girl talking to us, maybe that's in a situation like this. How did it happen to you in terms of, you know, falling for this? Because it is to play the game, we know that, but unfortunately one's life gets ruined a lot more. Let's take a break. We'll see you after this. Stay tuned.